Have you ever noticed that the moment you decide to change your life, your brain suddenly becomes a very convincing lawyer? It has evidence, arguments, statistics, reasons you should wait, reasons you should quit, reasons this probably won't work. And the strange thing is, it sounds like wisdom. It sounds reasonable. It sounds logical. It sounds like you're protecting yourself. But sometimes the very thing that's trying to keep you safe is also the thing keeping you stuck. And most of us don't even realize it's happening. We think we're being realistic. We think we're being careful. We think we're making smart decisions. But sometimes we're just talking ourselves out of the life we actually want. Welcome back to It's Just Monday, a place for people stuck in jobs they hate who are trying to build a way out. And today, I want to talk about why we keep talking ourselves out of the life we want. Because if we're being honest, most of us already know what we want. Maybe we want a different job. Maybe we want to start a business. Maybe we want to leave a relationship that no longer fits. Maybe we just want a life that feels better than the one we're currently living. The problem usually isn't that we don't know what we want. The problem is that somewhere between wanting it and actually going after it, something happens. We hesitate. We doubt ourselves. We convince ourselves to wait, to play it safe, to stay where we are a little longer. And this isn't about blame. It's not about beating ourselves up for the choices we've made. It's about understanding why we do this in the first place, because we have more influence over the direction of our lives than we sometimes realize. So the question becomes, if so many people are unhappy with their jobs, their finances, their relationships, why do we constantly talk ourselves out of doing the very things that could help us move forward? A lot of it comes down to the mind. I'm sure you've heard the phrase, the mind is a powerful thing. And it is. So powerful, in fact, that it can sometimes convince us to stay inside a life we're desperately trying to escape. So why does this happen? Why do we keep talking ourselves out of things? Why do we resist change even when we're unhappy? The answer is actually pretty simple. Because your mind was never designed to make you successful. It was designed to keep you alive, to protect you, to help you survive. And for most of human history, survival was the priority. The problem is that your mind doesn't always know the difference between physical danger and emotional discomfort. To your mind, rejection feels dangerous. Failure feels dangerous. Embarrassment feels dangerous. Disappointment feels dangerous, even though none of those things can physically harm you. So when you start thinking about doing something that could change your life, your mind immediately starts looking for ways to protect you from those feelings. Not because it's trying to ruin your life, because it's trying to keep you safe. But the problem is that growth rarely feels safe. Starting a business doesn't feel safe. Applying for a new job doesn't feel safe. Putting yourself out there doesn't feel safe. Creating something doesn't feel safe. Change requires uncertainty, and uncertainty makes the mind uncomfortable. So your mind offers you an alternative: comfort. Stay where you are, wait a little longer, think about it some more, maybe start next month, maybe next year, maybe when you're more confident, maybe when you're more prepared. And before you know it, years have passed. Not because you didn't want a different life, but because comfort kept winning the argument over progress. Have you ever had an idea that genuinely excited you? Something that felt different. Something that felt like it could actually change your life. Maybe it was a business idea. Maybe it was a side hustle. Maybe it was a creative project. Maybe it was simply a plan to finally leave a job you hate. At first, you're excited. You start imagining what life could look like if it worked. You make plans, you do research, you start taking those first few steps, but then something starts to happen. The excitement begins to fade, and the questions start showing up. Could this really work? Am I wasting my time? What if I fail? What if this is just another thing that doesn't work out? And slowly, you go from asking whether it could work to convincing yourself it won't. You start collecting evidence. Every past failure, every disappointment, every time something didn't go according to plan, and suddenly your mind has built an entire case against the idea. Not because the idea is bad, not because success is impossible, but because your mind is trying to protect you from the possibility of being disappointed again. So it starts making suggestions. Maybe now isn't the right time. Maybe you should wait. Maybe you should focus on something more realistic. And if you're not careful, you'll eventually talk yourself out of something before it ever had a real chance to succeed. And I've done this more times than I can count. A couple years ago, I started a blog. I guess you could say that was my first real exit plan. At the time, I thought writing might be my way out. And for a while, I was all in. I spent countless hours writing articles, learning SEO, taking blogging courses, watching tutorials, trying to figure out how people were actually making money online. And eventually, I started seeing small signs of progress, a little more traffic, a few articles ranking, little hints that maybe something was working. But instead of feeling encouraged, I started questioning everything. Was it real progress? Was I just getting lucky? Was I seeing what I wanted to see? And eventually, I started feeling like success was always being dangled, just out of reach. Close enough to keep me going, never close enough to actually grab. And that's where the doubts started getting louder. Maybe this isn't going anywhere. Maybe you're wasting your time. Maybe you're getting your hopes up. Maybe you're not good enough. And over time, I listened. Not all at once, slowly, one doubt at a time, one excuse at a time, one delay at a time, until eventually I walked away from it. Looking back, I don't know whether the blog would have succeeded. Maybe it would have succeeded. Maybe it wouldn't have. But I do know this. My mind had already convinced me it wouldn't before I ever gave it a real chance to find out. So how do you know when your mind is trying to protect you instead of help you? One sign is when you start acting like you already know the future. You haven't tried. You don't have the evidence, but somehow you've already decided how the story ends. It won't work. Nobody cares. It's too late. I'm not good enough. Another sign is when comfort starts disguising itself as logic. You tell yourself you'll start tomorrow. You'll start when things calm down. You'll start when you have more time, more money, more confidence, more certainty. But sometimes that's not wisdom. Sometimes it's fear, asking for one more day. And maybe the biggest sign of all is when you spend more time explaining why something won't work than actually giving it a chance. Because at that point, you're no longer evaluating the possibility. You're building a case against it. Another sign is when you require certainty before you're willing to take action. You want guarantees, proof, evidence that it will work before you even begin. But most meaningful changes in life don't come with guarantees. They come with possibilities. I think one of the hardest truths I've had to learn is that the voice holding us back usually doesn't sound negative. It sounds responsible. It sounds practical. It sounds realistic. That's why it's so easy to believe. And to be clear, I'm not saying every dream works out. I'm not saying every idea succeeds. And I'm definitely not saying we should ignore reality. What I'm saying is that sometimes we reject ourselves before life ever gets the chance to. Sometimes we quit before we know. Sometimes we convince ourselves that failure is guaranteed simply because we're afraid of being disappointed. And I think a lot of people are carrying around dreams they never truly gave a chance. Not because they weren't capable, but because their mind convinced them it was safer not to try. So if you've been talking yourself out of something lately, a business idea, a career change, a creative project, or simply a different life, maybe ask yourself one question. Is this really wisdom? Or is this fear pretending to be wisdom? Because the answer to that question might tell you whether you're protecting yourself or keeping yourself stuck. Thank you guys for watching. And if this video resonated with you, let me know in the comments. What's one thing you've been talking yourself out of doing? And if you're someone trying to build your way out of a life that no longer fits you, subscribe. Because that's what this channel is about. Real conversations for people trying to create something better, even when their own mind is trying to convince them not to.